Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's Podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett, and today is episode 176. It's October the 8th, 2025, a nice little misty, rainy day, something we've needed here for a couple of months. Our guest today is a retired electrical engineer. He is a sports official. He has been an athlete and still an athlete. Mr. Jim Kirby, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Let's talk a little bit about your growing up. Where you grew up around, Bailey Avenue, Hedrick Street?
I grew up on Smith Street, right behind the Babe Ruth ballpark.
Now, I remember that neighborhood, there was a lot of baseball players, man. I mean, the Farishes and Subtle and Scarboroughs and Palmers and Burgess.
Gary Bailey was my next door neighbor.
What was Randy Palmer's brother's name?
Chuck
Palmer, yeah.
Chuck Palmer. He was a few years older than us.
Yeah, and you ever hear anything about those guys? I graduated with Randy, but I never...
Randy went to Marshall, and then he ended up down in Virginia, I understand. I have not seen him for years.
Yeah.
And Gary, he worked for Means Lumber for many years, and then I think we're all retired now.
Well, Gary had... I used to run into him some when I was in the construction business, and he lives right behind Woodrow Wilson, the football state, right beside of it.
That's what I understand.
And you had the Ronnie and Jerry and Johnny and all those Farish boys. They all like baseball. Seemed to be the favorite sport. They may have played others. I don't know. You can tell me a little more about that.
Well, basically, we ended up playing baseball about every day. As soon as school was out, we would get up in the mornings, go to Babe Ruth ballpark. And I still remember, if you hit the ball out of the infield in the air, it was a home run.
Oh, really?
That's how, when we were little, no one could hardly do that. And very few, I think the only one to hit a home run in Little League, Bill Burgess may have, but Randy Palmer hit one. The rest of us weren't big enough. We were all very small as we were growing up.
Now, Jerry Farish hit some in Babe Ruth because it was a short right field fence, and he was left-handed batter. And of course, now they put a big screen up, but back then it was... but a lot of people don't realize... The neighborhood I came from too, we would play. You could play. We'd play 3-on-3. I mean, we'd have a pitcher, an infielder, an outfielder play straight base or whatever, and it didn't matter how many players you had. You always seemed to come up with a ball game. Now, did you ever go down and play at Pinecrest behind it?
We played there occasionally and all. I remember when my dad was young, Appalachian Power Company had their own softball team, and they competed in the Beckley softball fast pitch league. And Dad used to practice there. Somehow he had a connection there, and we were able to practice some there because practice time in Beckley at that time was hard to find a field to practice on. We practiced there and at Maxwell Hill grade school.
Yeah, I played with the Dido Petrantazzi and the Braves, and Dido carried a 4x8 sheet of plywood and with legs and any flat piece. We actually, what used to be the airport at Skelton, and then now it's Lewis Nissan or something. We practiced out there, and it was rough, but it was flat. And it really still is a problem. I mean, you got, especially the coaches that want to really practice to get better. There's not many places around the front of Woodrow Wilson, behind Woodrow Wilson. They got a place out here at the dump now, but there's just too many teams for to use the facilities, and you wear the facilities out when you practice. But But I think they used to call that stadium behind Pinecrest Ballard Field or something like that. But we used to go over there some and play, and I used to go over and watch a lot of softball games. I thought that one time, I thought that was the biggest field in the world, and then when I went over there as an adult, it wasn't near as long as I thought it was.
Right.
You know, but did the guys in the neighborhood play football and basketball and stuff too?
We
Or
played pickup and all. I think I was the only one that played high school basketball in the neighborhood.
yeah. That was kind of the way our neighborhood was too. I mean, we had whatever the season was, we played, but then when they got old enough to play high school and stuff, there was only two or three guys and no superstars. And there actually was a couple of younger guys that came along. David Thomas and Dale Thomas but they were several years younger than me, and I was pretty well not playing Sandlot anymore when they come around.
I understand that.
But they were. Now you had a Babe Ruth Field was. I can remember they either give you a quarter or they give you something for chasing foul balls. I don't know what it was now.
I think it was you could get a quarter or a drink at the concession stand, I believe is what it was. If you catch, go chase a foul ball or a home run ball and bring it back.
Yeah, because they lost a lot of balls. The woods was behind there, and it would be sometimes competitive. I remember one time going chasing a ball, and there's about two or three trying to take it away from you.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes they get ugly, Yeah. But did your dad was from Kentucky, wasn't he?
Well, my dad was born in Kentucky. He grew up at Glenview, which is just between Crab Orchard and Glen White. And he went to Woodrow for 1 year, and he'd gone to Glen White for up through 8th grade, went to Woodrow for a year, found out that you had to be someone to be able to play sports at Woodrow. So he ended up going to Sophia and played basketball and football at Sophia High School. And he walked from there to Sophia because there wasn't any transportation. Walked down some old country roads and stuff. And it was about 3 miles is what he walked to school every day.
Wow. Yeah, I can remember I wrote a story once about Pete Colacerto. He lived at Glen White, and he played football, basketball, and track. And he would hitchhike home from Woodrow, the old Woodrow, which is parked now, every day. I mean, almost every day of the year. And then every once in a while, his dad would not be working that and would come and get him. But he usually had the same people that would pick him up, back in those days. People, now the kids, if you don't pick them up and take them right to the door, they're not going to play.
That's for sure.
And I can remember my mother never drove, and I lived home with just my mother, and I would walk uptown with my birth certificate and a note from my mother and sign up for Little League and youth football, and because I wanted to play. And it was a little different. But now where you lived, you guys went to Central Elementary.
Went to Central Elementary, and very fortunate there. I had real good teachers all the way through Central, and I still remember all their names. And Chuck Akers was the principal, and he coached our basketball team. Because normally the principal or a male teacher would always coach, and you had to be at least in the 4th grade to even try out for basketball. And as it got, we were very fortunate at Central. We were able to practice at the rec center.
Who was the coach?
Chuck Akers.
Okay, Chuck.
Chuck Akers. He ended up being superintendent of Fayette County Schools.
Yeah, he was Dr. Chuck Akers.
It was Dr. Chuck Akers then, and he hired my sister to teach at Meadowbridge High School.
Really? And he used to work at Little League back in those days when they used to umpire and keep the fields up. He did that for a while. And then
Yes.
Pete Colacerto and Vic Peelish and Ross Hutchins. I mean, it was the educators had to work in the summertime in those days. Now, did you play youth football?
I played 1 year at. I was always, like I said, small, and finally I talked my parents into it. When I was 12 years old, I got to play for Bowling Addition.
Who was coaching then?
Mr. Thurman, I believe.
Okay.
I think that's who was the coach at that time.
Yeah.
And but we still couldn't compete with East Beckley and South Beckley. They were very good.
Yeah, that was now when I played for East Beckley, but it was us and West Beckley West Beckley had Bob Blankenship and those guys, and we always, it was knock down, drag out. And back then it was only like 5 teams, and we had kids from Shady, and South had kids from Sophia in that area, and it was a lot bigger situation. I didn't realize he went to Sophia. He officiated football and basketball for years, didn't he?
That is correct.
And I remember him in football a lot. I don't remember him in basketball.
He did a lot of basketball games and things like that. And one of the coaches was Jennings Boyd from down at North Fork. He kept asking after Dad and a couple of the officials from Raleigh County to go down and do their games, because Raleigh County at that time probably had some of the top basketball officials in the state.
Yeah, Paul Veneri and that bunch. Paul Veneri called a lot of state tournaments and stuff too. And when I was coaching football, we used to get a crew out of Mercer County would come up and work for us a couple times, and Ergie Smith and that group. And I mean, they were not only great officials, they were first class guys, and they would come to Raleigh County from Mercer County for the same price we were paying Raleigh County guys, but we just used them every once in a while. But really, really good, and I think each one of them called multiple sports at that time. Now, your dad started working at the power company right after he got out of high school?
Right after he got out of high school. We worked at down at Eccles in the beginning, I think at the company store. He delivered, I think, for RC Cola on that. And then I think he was around 20. He got to started working for the power company and worked for them for over 40 years.
Yeah. Now, where was your mom from?
My mom was from right here in Stanford.
Really?
She grew up down on Hoist Road, I think it was.
What was her last name?
It was Withrow.
Withrow, okay.
And there were several of them. My Uncle Frank Withrow, he had Withrow's service station, or repair shop there at 705 Johnstown Road.
Okay.
Right by Atkinson's Supermarket and the Baptist Church there.
All right. Frank Withrow
was my mom's brother.
Now, your mom's name was Bessie?
Bessie Withrow, and Mom had lost her arm when she was like 6 years old or something like that. She lost her right arm in a car accident.
Really?
And I never realized that she even had a handicap, because there was nothing that she couldn't do. She could iron, she could cook, she would do our laundry. And I never even considered her having a handicap. And the only other individual I can remember that had a lost limb back then was Ross Earl, who coached me in basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, and your mom worked concession.
She worked concessions. She worked, Mom and Dad, put a lot into raising us 5 children.
Now, you mentioned Ross Earl. He could swing a paddle too. I was a recipient one time of that. It was kind of funny though. A guy and I kind of squared off in phys ed class, and we got reported. They had captains we got reported, and Ross took us back there, and he gave us both a little swat and talked to us a little bit, and he said, he was going to hit the wall, and he said, if you tell anybody I didn't paddle you, I'm really going to bring him back here and bust you. And he hit the wall about 3 times, then he hit it again about 3 times, and we come out there, and everybody thought we got a real bad whipping, but he was a nice guy. He was, and one of the winningest coaches in West Virginia. But now you, when you got to junior high, you played football, basketball, and still played baseball.
Still played baseball and things of this nature.
And you were still not a real big guy.
I'm not very big. I didn't weigh 100 pounds until I was in high school.
But I remember in a football game at Beckley Junior High, you intercepted a pass against Fayetteville. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Well, I do.
That's going back about 60 years. So.
And now you have, what about your siblings? How many brothers and sisters?
I have got one brother, Frank. He was a mining engineer.
How old is he? Younger?
I was the oldest of
okay.
5 children and stuff. My sister Teresa, she taught math at Meadowbridge for 33 years, and then she retired.
Teresa graduated class 71.
She graduated, I think, with your wife.
Yeah,
in 71.
Yeah. Now you guys, your dad and your mom, really, you guys have kind of an olive complexion. Is there nationality or ancestry?
Well, a little bit of everything and all. Dad's family was mostly Irish and all that. And Mom's family was from Austria and Poland. I think it was more Polish at the time. And that, it was one of those things where just a blend. About my sister and I were dark complected. The other 3 were light complected.
Huh.
And, I tan real easy, and they have to watch for sunburn, my 3 youngest siblings, Frank and my 2 youngest sisters.
Who are they? What's their name?
That's Stephanie and Kathy. Kathy is in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Stephanie lives out in Indianapolis.
Now, your mother died pretty young, didn't she?
Mom was 57 when she died. She got cancer, and back then there was no early detection, and she lived less. Just about a year after we found out on Thanksgiving, one year in '76, and in '77 she died in the 1st of December.
Now, your dad coached. I remember coaching the Hawks in minor league, and then Red Sox in little league, and then he went to Babe Ruth. I know he coached Blue Ridge for a while. Didn't y'all have a team, Marty's or something?
Marty's was in between there. When I got drafted, I played for Keatley's.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about playing time. And if you didn't, most of the coaches back then, they only played 9 players. And you had to earn your playing time. And normally as a 13-year-old, you didn't get a whole lot of playing time. And then as you got 14 and 15, you got to play a lot more.
So they had a 13-year-old team?
No, it's just 13s played with 15s at the time.
Yeah, okay.
And so, we played for Keatley's, and then shortly after that, they went out of business. And I still miss that store. It was a local store that you could go up there and you could get what you wanted. And they could always, they didn't have it, they would get it for you.
That was the sporting goods store, and of course, people say, well, man, if you played for Keatley's, you got your glove at a discount or whatever.
That didn't happen. And then Marty's took over for a few years, and then Dad coached Marty's, and then he also coached Blue Ridge. But in the meantime, while he was coaching those teams, he was also still coaching the Red Sox, because I had a brother that was 4 years younger.
Oh.
And so Dad was coaching both the Red Sox and the Babe Ruth team at the same time.
That was, I think the first year when I played when I was 13 was the first year they had a 13-year-old all-star team, and the American had to play the National, and because there was so many teams, and so we got beat by the Nationals or Americans, whichever team it was, and then the year you played, y'all won the state championship.
We won the state championship, and after it was interesting. After we won the state championship, I got to play a lot more for Keatley's than what I had before that, because we came out and won that, and we beat I think I was on the American League team. We beat the Nationals, we beat Mullins, and then we beat Parkersburg in the state tournament.
Now they used to have the Ohio Valley tournament sometimes down here too, and when I coached in the minor league at Beckley Little League, we would have to. And I coached 2 years, and we would, if we played the first game, the coaches would have to umpire the second game, or vice versa, and we didn't get paid anything.
Right.
And then when Sarge Maynard took over the Babe Ruth League, this was after us, but I went over and umpired 1 year there because they had a shortage of umpires. They couldn't get anybody to umpire. And I actually liked the umpire behind the plate. Most of the guys didn't like the umpire behind the plate, but I did. And so
too.
they'd always come on over. I didn't know all the rules, but I thought I could call them all a strike, But Pete Crouch was also an umpire there for a long time, and it was a lot of fun. But now, when you got in high school, you said you wasn't very big. You didn't play basketball in the 10th grade, did you?
No, I played. I got cut, and I come to find out this may be cut out of our things, but back when Dad was coaching, he was very strict on the rules. My dad knew the rules inside and out, and he had called a couple of the coaches that were, you'd mentioned Pete Concerto and Vic Beelish, on a rule. Well, they got upset and they held it against me. I found out later on in life that they had held that against me, and I was cut in my 10th grade year going out for basketball.
Now, you played at the Y.
I played at the Y, and I still remember playing with Emmett Pugh, Gary Sutphin, Leon Froggy Lane, and things of that nature. And we were very competitive, even though we were not probably the favorite team.
I think that year that the team I was on won that year. It was called.
Did you play with Bill Burgess and Bill Kelly?
No. There was one team called the Lifters. You guys were called the Lovers, weren't you?
Probably.
There was one team called the Lifters. We were called the Fabulous Five, and I played with John Doolittle, not Robert, John,
Right.
and a guy named Ricky Bowling, who was Ricky. I went all the way through grade school with Ricky, and Ricky probably was one of the best basketball players around, period. But he wouldn't go out for high school. He was our leading scorer at Sylvia when we won the town district, and we had guys like Chew Coleman and Chubby Hughes and those guys that played too. And he was the best. He was the best player, but he wouldn't play. He wouldn't go out in high school, and so we used him in the Y League, and he'd score. We might score 40 points, and he'd get 35 or something.
35.
But whatever league we was in that year, we were seniors in high school. And John Doolittle, Mike Adderson.
Mike Adderson that ended up being a fireman, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. We called ourselves the Fabulous Five, but there actually was 7 of us. But I'm not a basketball player. I was a coach player, and one of those things. But it was. I remember you playing with Gary and them, and that was a pretty good ball club. Now, did you play baseball in high school?
Well, I ended up playing basketball in high school. That was the funny thing. I ended up Coach Wiseman hit me up, and he says, "We want to come out your junior year." And I had played in the summer league, and one of the guys I ended up playing with, Beckley had a very competitive summer league basketball. And I played with Ron Cowell and some other folks that were coming in from college. I didn't play with the high school kids, but evidently I impressed Coach Wiseman enough that he invited me out. Of course, you had to be invited to play at Woodrow basketball.
That was the year, though, they lost a lot of. Henry Dickerson was the only letterman.
He was about the only one coming back, and Henry played on my 12-year-old All-Star team. He was the first black to play in the Little League. Now, we had a Coleman boy that played in the minor league because the Elks at the time sponsored the league, and they did not have black members, and they didn't allow black boys to play in the Little League, which is, looking back on it, it's very frustrating that something like that. And some of my best friends later on ended up going to Sophia, and Chubby Hughes was one of them, and Tommy Coleman, and those folks, and they ended up being real good people, not just athletes. They were good people.
Yeah. It was a sad part. They didn't let them play youth football until I was 12, and they let them play that year. I don't know really why exactly. I know the how the laws were, but it seemed like Beckley was the last of the groups to incorporate integration, I guess, because we had it out here at Route 41. Had it at Sophia, blacks were allowed to play, and most of the teams you saw, but it was somebody in a higher position, I guess, was the one making the rules. Now that team with Henry Dickerson, a lot of people don't realize, and you guys had pretty good teams those 2 years. You played a lot when you was a senior.
I played a lot.
Yeah, because I remember you had a good game against Mullins that year, about 15 or 16 points, and Bluefield, you had about 15 or 16, and you guys had like a 14-7 record, but that was a tough schedule that Beckley played, but that's when Oak Hill was tough, and people don't realize that getting out of with Jim Lilly, the coach at Oak Hill, getting out of the sectionals was an accomplishment, and the 2 years that Henry played as a junior or senior, they didn't get out, did you?
No, on senior year, junior year, we got beat by Oak Hill, and then my senior year we got beat by Oak Hill by, I think it was 1 point or something like that. But I had 15 points in my last high school game.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't shoot very well, but I had one of those games where I made like 5 for 6 from the field.
But you took a growing spell, didn't you?
I took a growing spell between my sophomore and junior year and junior and senior year. But what was always interesting, Beckley always listed us a little bit smaller than what we were actually, the height-wise. It listed me like 5'10", 5'11". I'd go against a guy 6'2", found out I was taller than that guy. So I ended up being about 6'1", something like that. Yeah. But it was interesting when you would go play these teams, they would be listed all these tall kids, and we'd end up being taller than what they were. But that was Coach Wiseman, I think, in his way of making it look like you were an underdog playing against these taller kids.
Yeah. Now, did you play baseball then as a junior and senior in high school?
No, that goes to another thing. It was pretty difficult if you tried to play baseball back then because you had to, there was no field at Woodrow. You had to go over to the Dust Bowl or Warren Williams Field to play. And you had to get over there and play. And like I said, Vic Peelish and my dad didn't get along, so yeah. People told Dad later they couldn't understand why I didn't play.
Yeah,
but
that was
one of those things.
After Babe Ruth, they used to have a Warren Williams League. Did you play in that?
I played in the Warren Williams League, and I played for Tom's Peanuts. Tom Elkins coached the team, and then my last year over there, I played with Eddie Wooten and Tom Rappole. They were real good friends from basketball, and we did a lot of other things together. And I didn't play. I wasn't going out because I was working at Kroger's at the time. And they taught me, and they told their coach I could come over and I could pitch a little bit for them. And I ended up playing the last half of the season with another team. But I was playing with two of my best friends, with Tommy Rappole and Eddie Wooten.
Did you play infield mainly?
I played infield a lot, shortstop, second base, and I did a little bit of pitching.
In high school, I guess it all worked out. I mean, you were involved in the Key Club, the Mr. Britton's group, the Key Club, and the junior historians and conservation. You was in a lot of Booster Club.
Booster Club, Young Republicans. How was that?
Really?
And I was playing golf with Steve Tirico yesterday, and we were talking about being members of the Young Republicans.
I didn't even know they had a Young
Young
Republicans.
Republicans Club, and what was interesting about that, I turned 18, my senior year in high school, and went up to register to vote. And Mom and Dad says, well, you need to register Democrat. And I said, well, why? She says, well, 86% of Raleigh County is Democrat. So if you want to vote twice against those crooks, you better vote Democrat. Because if you sign up as a Republican at the time, there was only a few people that were on the Republican ticket.
Boy, has the pendulum swung.
The pendulum has swung, and I think we swung too far the other direction. I like it where it was about 50-50, and there's good folks on both sides of the ticket.
Oh, sure.
And I remember when I was there that Minor Scott was about the only Republican in Raleigh County that got elected, and I think he was a county commissioner.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. I mean, I registered as a Democrat, and I have never missed an election. I voted in every election, and I still am a registered Democrat. And but I have voted for as many Republicans as I have Democrats in the general election. Of course, you can't in the primary, but and I thought. There have been times I've thought about changing to maybe even going independent, but to me, and I'm not a big political guy, but to me it's almost like they're all kind of the same party, it's almost like, and so I try to do the best I can do, but I don't study it like some people do, and I'm not equipped to argue politics, so
I'm not either. I'm just looking for what is right for the people in general. Not only what might be good for Jim Kirby, but for what is good for all the residents of Raleigh County, the state of West Virginia, or the United States is the way I've got to look at things.
Now, you must have been a pretty good student. Was there any particular teachers or teacher that influenced you a little more than others, or anybody in high school or junior high or something?
Well, I would think my two math teachers, my 11th and 12th grade, I had Mrs. Gray and Mrs. Radcliffe. They were very influential in my math background, and it made math a lot easier in college because of having those two individuals. And another teacher that probably a lot of people don't think about, I had Mrs. Daughtery in 11th grade for English. And I still have thought often of the way she made us write a lot. It wasn't always the grammar that we did. We did a lot of theme writing, and that came in so handy in college.
She was an excellent teacher, and I was fortunate enough when I was teaching at Woodrow, I got her son in class. She didn't want to have him in class, and he was straight A's. I mean, great writer, just something else. I taught 11th grade English too, so she shared a lot of things with me when I first got up there. And now, when you graduated, you went to WVU.
I went to WVU
to study electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering.
Just curious, how come you didn't go to like Tech, West Virginia Tech?
Well, I've always been a Mountaineer fan. And West Virginia Tech, I didn't even think much about them at the time, going to Montgomery, going to WVU, and I had some scholarships there at WVU. And then at the last couple months of high school, I thought about going to Tech. And
I was thinking maybe you might want to play basketball or something.
I thought about that, and then the guy asked me to play golf down there at Tech. And I had not played high school golf, because if you were playing basketball, you basically, if you're playing basketball and football, you ran track. If you remember back in those days that you had to run track, or if you're basketball, you ran cross country. Well, if you didn't play football.
Now, who was the cross country coach then?
Do not remember.
Was it Jack Covey?
No, he wasn't the coach.
Well, when Nick Pugh was still running when you were a senior, and he was a sophomore when I was a senior, and they started a cross country program, and I went out for cross country, and Pete Colacerto was listed as the cross country coach, but he was still coaching football too. So Tim Weaver was a student at Beckley College, and he was a great runner, and he'd come in down from Pennsylvania, and so he actually took us out and trained us every day and coached us, and then Pete or Ken Wheeler would take us. If we didn't go to too many meets, we won't. But that particular year, I qualified for the states in the region, and it was in Morgantown, and nobody would take me. and I was going to drive. I drove back then. I said, "Well, I'll drive to Morgantown and run." And you can't do that. You got to have and nobody. So it was. And the bad part about the two guys that beat me in the region placed in the top 8 in the states, and it was one of those bittersweet things, I guess.
Right, because you made all state if you would have been able to get to the state tournament.
I would have thought I would have been, but I don't know for sure. But it was my senior year was just followed up with I broke my ankle a week or so later, and didn't get to wrestle my senior year. And it wasn't a good year for me. And I almost didn't get to run track, even though my ankle was healing, but it was still swelled up every once in a while. So it was just one of them things. Well, now, when you were at WVU, electrical engineering, of course, pretty demanding curriculum. Did you graduate in 4 years?
I graduated in 4 years.
And what did you want to do? Did you want to come back and work at Appalachian Power?
Well, they had an nepotism policy, and I could not work in Beckley for Appalachian Power. So I got offered a job at Ohio Power, which is one of the sister companies for Appalachian AEP. And I got offered a job at Mon Power, which was in Fairmont. Uh-huh. And I ended up going to work there at Mon Power, and I was going to stay there a few years and maybe move to Beckley or back to Beckley or something like that. And we ended up staying there for almost 50 years.
Well, you got married then. So.
I got married while I was still in college, and my wife finished up her degree there at WVU in nursing, and she ended up getting her master's and had enough hours to get her doctorate, but just didn't want to do the thesis to final paper and things on that. But she started out at teaching or at nursing at Fairmont General Hospital. She did that for a few years, and then she started teaching at Fairmont State College in the nursing program.
Now, is she from Beckley?
She's from Beckley, and her dad was Meredith Trent, who taught at Woodrow. And her mom was a nurse at Raleigh General, plus she had also worked at Appalachian. And so she basically combined her parents' skills of teaching and nursing while working at Fairmont State.
Now, was she in the same class you were in?
No, she was class of 72.
Okay. I didn't know her. I had young Meredith in class, and then he rented from me several years later when I was in the rental business, and I still see him every once in a while. He was playing music and stuff. But yeah, the old man, he was. I was in D7, and he was like D13 or something. The class, and we had our prep period together, And so sometimes we'd get together in the lounge or whatever, but he had a lot of stories. He was a great guy.
Oh, yes.
And he had played football in high school. I think he was a quarterback.
Well, he didn't get to play in high school because he moved here from Virginia his senior year in high school. But he ended up playing at Concord, started at Concord in college, and was also the punter.
I'll be darned. I knew he had played some football, but he was a great guy to talk to. Now so what does an electrical engineer actually do? I mean, I don't know what you do.
Well, that's interesting. I was involved in planning. I was also involved in operations. And planning is looking at your existing electrical grid system and seeing what you have today. And then when you get new customers coming on, trying to figure out what you need to do to meet future electrical demands.
And how many do they have in a company like that, like in Fairmont?
It varies in things of that nature and things like this. It could be as many as 20 or so.
Yeah.
Or it could be larger, depending on how large your company is. But, I did that in the beginning. Then I got into supervision for a while, and I ended up in supervision at the end. And one of the things that like when Wayne Bennett would sign up for electric, my people would have to go out and figure out what it would take to get Wayne Bennett service. Was he along the street, or was he back a mile or two, and then try to figure out how to get that? And you'd have to procure right-of-ways from different individuals to get the service to them.
Yeah.
And at the end, I was doing planning, supervising planning, and I was really over in reliability and protection. And we determined, used to be when the lights blinked, no one complained. The electric stayed on. That was back before I started before we had all this digital equipment, and you put the reclosure in, they would blink the lights, and no one concerned because the lights would come back on in 2 seconds. And then when you got digital equipment, have to reset the clock on my microwave, had to restart the clock on my stove, my alarm clock, I had to reset those. So people started getting more particular on the quality of electric that they wanted. So we had to, do what we could do to decrease that.
Now the demand for electricity, with all the computers, with all the electric, all the stuff, back in the old days when I was in, if you had a transistor radio, you were high class, But now, everything's electronic, and the demand has got to be unbelievable. And do you think, like we're in our state, do we depend that much on coal still yet, or are we going more to solar, or what are we?
Well, the thing is, when I first started, we had lots of power stations. And when I retired a couple years ago, we were down to just 2 power stations, one at Harrison, which is in Shenstown, and Fort Martin, which is just outside of Morgantown. And those were all coal-operated stations. We had stations at Parkersburg, Royal Island. We had stations at Albright, which is in Preston County. And these were all coal-generated stations. And we only had the one hydro within Mon Power. And that was just a little place there at Cheat Lake called Lake Lynn that we had for that. And then as people started, complaining about the air quality, so you got to do a lot of things to put on to filter the air. I'll call it filter the air. And we had to put this on to make sure that the air quality was a lot better than what it was when we first started. But power stations are very expensive to build, and it takes a long time to build one. Now, we had the one at Pleasance, and we sold it to an outside entity after we became part of First Energy.
Now you worked almost 50 years. It's like 49 years.
49 years and plus, and I wanted to make 50. I'm one of these people that if you like what you're doing, you need to keep doing it. In the last 5 years, I was working from home, and I hired 5 electrical engineers, and I never met them until they came through the door. That was COVID had hit, and we were hiring people and working from home, and I ended up getting 5 good individuals. And most of all those interviews were done on Skype or something like this.
Wow.
Teams. We did a lot of interviews on Teams, and I was able to hire some very good engineers. But see, Mon Power doesn't encompass the Beckley area. But we had Lewisburg, Hinton, down in the southern part of the state. We came to Summersville and then went north. And we also had the northern panhandle in Weirton. And the eastern panhandle was part of our company, but it was run by Potomac Edison Power.
Now you have kids, children.
I have 3 adult children.
And 2 boys and a girl? Or?
I've got 3 boys.
3 boys.
Yes.
And what do they do?
Well, my oldest son, he's an attorney in Charleston. My middle son, he works for Follett Books, who supplies a lot of the bookstores for colleges and universities throughout the country. And he's down in Richmond, Virginia. And my youngest son's in construction, and he lives in Fairmont, West Virginia.
Now, after spending 50 years working for the same company and pretty much in the same place, why did you come to Beckley after you retired? I would have thought you would have had a lot of friends in Fairmont.
I had a lot of friends in Fairmont, but Beckley's home. And Beckley's always been, well, it first started out that my wife was down here taking care of her parents who got sick in their later years. And she retired a little bit early so that she could take care of them. And then we got to the point, well, a lot of good things happening in Beckley. It was closer to our children. One in Richmond, it cut about 2 hours off the drive. One in Charleston cut about an hour off the drive. And thought, well, southern West Virginia has always been a good place it was a great place growing up. I still remember all the fun times we had growing up, and I thought, well, Beckley's in between the two, and it would be a good place to finish out whatever happens.
You'd make a good salesman for Beckley, but I'm going to go back to your dad just 1 second. He coached, even after you had gone through and your brother, he still coached.
He still coached, and he still had people, after he got out of coaching, people would come up to him that were playing high school ball. Can you come out and help me? I'm not hitting the ball. What am I doing wrong? And Dad would go out and analyze what they were doing and was able to help them. One of the last ones was one of the Miss City boys.
Now, there were, if you think about it, when you and I played, and I've brought this up before in other conversations, but when we played Little League ball, and it seemed like the coaches took it a lot more seriously. I mean, you had guys, Dip Sepkowski of the Tigers, you had George Strico, the Indians, Dido Petrantazzi, your dad, over Ronald Troutman, Steve Passel. And some of them had kids and some of them didn't have kids. Ronald Troutman and Sepkowski, I don't think had any kids that played. George Strico didn't have any kids that played. But those guys, man, they liked the game and they worked and they didn't like to lose either. And it just seemed like it was more competitive. I don't know.
We had a lot of good athletes at that time too, and I still look back when I was 11 years old. That was probably one of the best Little League teams that could have come out of the Beckley Little League, and we did not get to compete in the all-star tournaments because of the racial or the civil unrest in Beckley at the time. And so we didn't get to compete.
I forgot about that.
And we ended up just playing I think we were in the Eastern League and the Western League, and we played best 2 out of 3, I think it was, for the All-Stars. And Dad, when we were playing, Bill Kelly was a pitcher for the Yankees.
Yeah.
And we always seemed to hit Bill pretty well. But he couldn't, and after Dad was catching Bill he was coaching the All-Star team at that time, he couldn't understand how anybody could hit Bill Kelly. Because he had Bill was about the same height he was, Bill Burgess, Gene Gilkerson, Steve Licklider, Gary Dorsey. They were all good athletes.
Yeah, yeah. And again, when they got up in Babe Ruth and they made the All-Star team, if it could have had one team, Beckley would have done a tremendous job. But you had where Licklider and Hughes and those guys over here, and then you had Burgess and Cassidy and these guys over here, and it was kind of and they had to play each other the first game. It was kind of a sad way to go, I guess. But now you're very active. You play your pickleball. You're a golfer. Did your dad? He lived close to the golf course. He played a lot of golf.
He played a lot of golf. He caddied at Twin Oaks Golf Course growing up, and not Dr. Ray that you and I would know, but he caddied for Dr. Ray's dad, and they had sand greens at Twin Oaks at the time, and then they put grass greens in there, and I ended up, that's where I learned to play golf, was at Twin Oaks.
Do you ever play competitively in any tournaments or anything?
Not really. I played in club tournaments and things like that when I was in Fairmont, and I play once a week now.
Yeah.
That's about it.
But is there anything that you would have done over? I mean, you've had a good life. I know your grandkids keep you busy watching them play sports and stuff. Anything, though, growing up that you would have wished you would have done a little different or would have approached just a little different?
Well, I often thought, well, if I'd have really taken the time and practiced my golf, I could have probably played competitive at golf. Or I've often thought, should I have gone to, like you'd asked me earlier, should I have gone to one of the conference schools and possibly played basketball? And a couple coaches had asked Dad whether I was interested. But then I got to thinking, well, do I want to play that, or do I want to, get an education at the time? Mm-hmm. And an education was more important to me. I was the first in my family to go to college. And
another thing, too, about sports, I mean, you could break an ankle or pull a muscle or something any time.
Well, I've done that, some of that playing competitive softball. I still think sometimes I was still playing softball up until about 5 years ago.
Really? Now, I played for many years, and it just got to a point, like I've said before, we played 160 games a year, and it was like every weekend, every other night. It was something else. But when did you start refereeing? You refereed volleyball.
I refereed volleyball, umpire softball. This is my 25th year doing volleyball. And I waited until my kids were out. They were out of high school. My wife looked at me. She said, "What are you going to do now?" She says, "You just come home and do nothing." And a friend of mine asked me if I would consider doing volleyball with him. And so I started doing volleyball. And then a couple years later, while I was doing volleyball, someone says, "Well, why don't you do softball with us?" So I started umpiring softball. And I've been very fortunate in both sports. I've done state tournament in both softball multiple years, and I've done multiple volleyball tournaments.
Now, do you still do softball?
I still do softball and things. And what was interesting, when I came back to Raleigh County, I called to see whether I could join the board here in Raleigh County, because I was president of the Northern Softball Board. I'd been an officer in the Volleyball Association. I was a trainer, a rules interpreter for volleyball for many years. And when I asked us to join, they said I could possibly give me some grade school games and some junior high games, maybe. And I had just done the state tournament the year before. So I talked to I had some friends down in Charleston, and they were the president there. He says, come down there, I'll give you a full high school schedule. So I went down, I refereed my volleyball out of the Kanawha Southern Board.
Yeah. Have you ever tried referee basketball?
Dad enjoyed basketball. He enjoyed football, and he told me never to get into officiating. Well, when I first started working for the power company, and they said, well, I asked them about doing something officiating. They said, you mean we're not paying you enough money that you have to get a second job? And I didn't know what to say. I said, because I was making a lot more as an engineer than what I would be as a basketball official, back in the 70s. So I decided I'd rather work as an engineer than take that challenge that direction.
Basketball to me would be the hardest sport to officiate. It's faster now. Of course, even though they went to 3 officials, and my only experience when I worked at the Y, sometimes the officials wouldn't show up, or one of them wouldn't show up, and I would have to call. Or even in the men's league, sometimes the official wouldn't show up, and I'd have to call. And I hated it. I did not like basketball. Of course, I didn't really study the game much, or didn't really want to do it. But I refereed wrestling for 28 years, and then I did a little baseball. I always wanted to get into football, but I was coaching football a while, and then when it came time where I had time to do it, I wasn't as interested then. And now, I mean, high school games, they have 7 officials, and we used to play with 3 all the time.
3 officials was what we had for years, and things like that. And then they went to 4. Basketball, Dad was in his late 60s, and Jim Parker came to Dad. He says, well, once you come back and officiate, it's easy with 3 officials. And Dad says, I retired here several years ago, and I don't want to get involved in that.
Now, in volleyball, of course, you don't have to run and stuff, but you gotta have good eyesight, and you gotta be. What's the strengths and weaknesses?
Well, the biggest thing about volleyball, you have to make a call every time the ball is touched, or the ball hits the floor. And when I first started, you had 2 officials, and for a high school game, you didn't have any line judges, and you had to make the calls. And that was a difficult point of it. The other thing is the ball hit. When I first started, it was not rally scoring. You had to serve to get a point.
Yeah.
Then it became rally scoring. The coaches thought, well, it's going to take too long to do a game. Well, rally scoring has speeded up the game.
It hadn't been in that long.
It's probably been in about 15 years now, something like that. And then you're looking at ball handling skills. Well, they've taken ball handling skills out. Is the ball hit double? Is it hit with your right hand, left hand? When you hit it, when it's only supposed to be one hit. And this past year, they changed the rule on volleyball where as long as you can double hit it as long as it stays on your side of the net. The only doubles that you call now, and that was probably, is when the ball goes across the net. And you only get probably at the most 4 or 5 of those in a game's time that you'll see that happen. But that has been a big change, and that was ball handling is a very tough call when you were trying to call it on the setter. And I think it took the skill out of coaching by doing this, because if you got a real good setter, it's just like a knuckleball coming up. It's just not moving at all. It comes up, it's very easy to be hit. Abby Dillon from Woodrow just graduated last year. She is probably one of the best setters in the state for many years that I've seen. Like I said, I've been doing it for 25 years, and Abby was as good And the only other girl that I could see was a girl from Preston County. That was back when Preston County had good teams, and that's been about 20 years ago. And she had real soft hands, and when the ball would come up, it would just be dead and would be very easy to spike.
Have you ever coached any?
Wow. I was afraid you were going to ask that. I coached Little League Baseball for probably 10 to 15 years, about 15 years.
Following in your dad's footsteps.
I was following in my dad's footsteps. I said I'd never do it because I thought it put too much pressure on the child, because your dad expects too much out of you. He says, well, you ought to be able to do this. And as I coached with some people, and one of the things we talked about is if we're coaching together, you don't correct your son, and I won't correct my son. The opposite do that so that there is some consistency in that. And I try to make it fun for the kids. And I knew that they had other things that they might want to do. I had one boy that took singing lessons. He ended up being a very good singer in high school, and I think he may have even sung in college. Had another boy that played piano. And other coaches would not let them miss practice or show up late because they did something like that. And I was very good about that. And then I coached basketball for several years while my boys played, and a little bit other than that. And started, when I first started coaching, they said 5th and 6th grade. And then they started 4th grade basketball. And I coached when my two youngest ones were in 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th grade, because you had to have volunteer coaches. And then I had Bill Malone from East Fairmont ask me, he says, can you help me start a girls basketball league in Marion County? Well, I had no girls. Bill Malone, he's Eastside girls basketball coach. He comes up to me and says, can you help me get that started? In the first year we started girls basketball in Marion County, we had 5 teams. And you had to combine your 5th and 6th graders to get a team from each school. And it eventually progressed just like the boys, where you had plenty of girls wanting to come out and play basketball.
Wow.
But, I'm saying, well, what can I do, Bill? And, he'd seen how I worked with kids I lived on the west side of Fairmont, and he was the east side coach, but he had seen how I worked with children and wanted me to help him do that. And then I coached some AAU basketball. Cumberland, Maryland's only an hour and a half, and Uniontown's about an hour from Fairmont. And one year we were playing in both tournaments. After the high school season was over, we were playing in both Maryland and in Pennsylvania, and one day we played on a Saturday, championship Saturday. We played in Maryland, won. Then we went to Uniontown and won also. Of course, I had some pretty good players back then.
So you've paid your dues.
I paid my dues with that, but I enjoyed coaching and working with children, trying to be a positive role model. And I do the same thing when I officiate. And when we have the team conference with the captains and the coaches, I always close each of my meetings. Kids, I know that you have all this pressure of everything while you're competing, but while you're on the court, I expect you to smile and have fun. That's how I close all my conference meetings with the captains, either at volleyball or softball when we have our plate meetings.
Well, I think one of my proudest accomplishments as a coach, I never claimed to be a great coach or anything like that, but I coached football and wrestling, and I coached track and cross country and stuff too. But in all the games and all the wrestling matches that I coached, I never got an unsportsmanlike call against me. Now, some of my kids occasionally, and I would, but I thought, and it was important to me not to get a call, an unsportsmanlike call, even though there were times that I wanted to let the ref know. But it was after 28 years, I kind of felt like it was my best accomplishment. And kids pay attention to that stuff. I mean, if you got a coach that's a wild man out there, and I'm not saying that kids are negatively influenced, but sometimes they think that's the norm, and it's not, and that's a whole different podcast.
Well, it's definitely when I see coaches and the coaches that properly train their kids, the kids they respect the officials, and each year I'll have a team that is sort of special that they'll come up and do something that is really nice to the officials. And last year in softball, I had George Washington, and I had George Washington in the state tournament a few years ago, and they were very competitive. The coaches were, real tough, and I had them play no kill this year. And after the game, I thought that was the most positive set of coaches and players that I had seen in several years in softball. And so you've got a thing where you can write coaches up or schools up for positive or negative behavior. And I sent a positive behavior on that and mentioned how positive the coaches were, how positive the players were. For the first time in my officiating career, I got a thank you card in the mail from the George Washington players and coaches thanking me for recognizing their positive behavior. And that is the only time I've ever received a thank you card in the mail, and as an official, that's really sort of special.
Yeah, there were a couple times I had to be escorted out of town.
I've had that before too.
But now what do you think? I mean, I don't think you have as much in volleyball, and probably not as much in softball. But what do you think about the transferring and the even kneel in high school now? And what do you feel about that?
I'm not in favor of that. I think that you need to support the school that you're at. There needs to be a reason for transferring, just not to go for sports. My grandson plays on a travel soccer team. There was a child from Nitro and 3 other boys on the team from different schools in the Kanawha Valley. Well, he went down to play Nitro this year. All 4 of those children are playing for, 4 of those boys are playing for Nitro now. And Nitro's got a very good soccer team. And you see that with the different things. The quarterback at Herbert Hoover. Kanawha Valley's very, very bad about this right now. The quarterback at Herbert Hoover played at Capital last year.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, why would they do that? And I was reading an article about colleges of these players that play a year at each school and they've been there for 4 or 5 years and they have no ties to it. What's going to happen if they don't make it in the pros? They're no longer, what type of Letterman jacket are you going to wear?
Yeah.
What type of, connections do you have for a college? Well, in high school, like I said, my grandkids in Charleston, they go to Charleston Catholic. My granddaughter just graduated and she's playing soccer at Rhodes College down in Memphis. But people in Beckley think that Charleston Catholic recruits. Well, the kids that were playing with my granddaughter and my grandson, they started there at Sacred Heart Grade School, and they've gone all the way up through the Catholic school system. They have no recruits from that. And I think in all the time, they've had kids leave because of financial concerns and their parents wanting to do other things. For my granddaughter, I think there was one girl that transferred in, and her family moved from another county to Charleston, and she came in there to go to school. But it's not, I know that Dad was like that. The private schools, they all recruit. It's not as much as what some of the public schools are doing today.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of, you see a player at one school, now they're at something else. And I think you need to have some allegiance to the high school that you're at. And I know Raleigh County's got some of it going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
I was just shocked when I heard some of the things, because I ran across a couple of girls at a volleyball match this year, and I asked them why they weren't playing. They said, well, I'm going to another school now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I can understand there are certain situations where, I mean, a coach and a player or whatever may just it just can't function. And, or a player just feels like it's getting a fair shake and it's time to move. But every year moving, I can't, and they do it legally, and or they wouldn't be doing it, but at the law, the rules are so wide open now. They allow you a one-time transfer, but then come back to your home school, and then just I don't know. It's and I have a real hard time with 4 classifications. I really,
We don't have enough children to be doing 4.
no
We're
way.
3 at the maximum is what we should be in their sports.
Absolutely. And you got, like, in football right now, you got 20 schools in 4A. 16 of them will make the playoffs. It looks like it's going to be very possible that there'll be teams in the top 8 with losing records. In the top 8, almost all the teams in the second 8 who make the playoffs will have a losing record or just an even record. And there's a couple of teams that's going to make the playoffs. And when I say losing record, I don't mean there's a couple of teams that'll be making the playoffs. It'll probably be 3-7. I mean, that's not. I just cannot agree with that. But we don't make the rules, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, it's the same things going on in volleyball too. On the quad A volleyball, like you said, you got 20 teams. Instead of having sectional play, they're just doing 2 regional championships, a southern and a northern regional.
Yeah.
And Buchanan is in the southern region. And I thought, well, Buchanan, I'm sure in the southern region, that's northern to me. But most of your quad A schools are over in the Eastern Panhandle. And then you got Morgantown, Preston, and University, and then you got like the Wheeling Parks. But I think there's 5 quad A schools now in the Eastern Panhandle because it's grown so much over the last 15 years.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the same way in football. I mean, the Eastern Panhandle and Morgantown and University, and those schools are growing. And here down in the southern part of the state, our schools are losing population. Woodrow's the only 4A school in southern West Virginia, and
I thought Oak Hill was. I thought Oak Hill had
Oak Hill is in football. Yeah,
football. Yes, they just moved up to that.
Yeah, but nobody is transferring into Woodrow. They're transferring out of Woodrow, and it's I don't know what the answer is. What's on your bucket list? Have you got something that you would like to do or travel to, or I know you're a busy guy, but
well, I'd like to start first thing was how did I end up at Faith Community Church? You ever think about that?
Well, I wonder how I ended up.
Well, I ended up because I was listening to your podcast, Wayne, and you were interviewing Harold Lilly, and that made an impact on me. They said it sounded like that ought to be a good place to see what's going on there. And I got to Faith, and first time I was there, the only person I saw that I knew was you. and we hadn't made a connection in many years, but it was just like we were just old friends catching up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, I ran across Steve Tirico and Gene Petrotazzi and a few other folks. Then I got involved in pickleball there. And I found out that it's just a bunch of people that care for each other. The minister cares for you. The people themselves care for you. And I thought I said, well, this is a place that I want to be. And that was based on yours and Harold's conversation on this podcast. I probably should have warned you ahead of time that I was going to say that. But that was one of the things that really had an impact on me is your thoughts on Faith Community Church, and that's what got me there. And then I found out what a wonderful experience that was.
And it still is for us. You know, we had when we started going there, they just had started a 9:30 program, and there was only like 60 or 70 people showing up, and then all of a sudden 300 or 400 people, and there's the part I like about it is, and the reason it's growing is there's something for everybody. I mean, I'm sure probably most of the population is under 40, but 40 years old, and because they have so much for the kids and activities and those kind of things. But if you're over 40, if you're over 50, if you're over 60, if you want to get involved, there's plenty of things to do, you know, and plenty of things to get involved in. And I guess the part I like the most is, and I wasn't used to this, but they just want you to come or participate either on the internet or just check in. Nobody, I don't see anybody been judgmental or anything like that. Any things I've been involved with, and that's the part I like, because I've been to some churches in the past that was extremely judgmental.
Well, I have too, and
it wasn't always fun, but Jim, I appreciate you coming by and talking to and reminiscing a little bit. It's nice to, a lot of the guys we mentioned, I'm not sure some of them are still around. I know a few of the guys haven't been as fortunate, and you were one of those guys that were, I guess, I don't know whether you turned 18 in the 12th grade. I turned 18 in the freshman year of college, and me and Chubby Hughes and Charlie Capillari, we just had birthdays, 75 years old. And one of the things I always wondered, I'd like to have been held back a year, because I started school when I was 5, and those guys did too. And Charlie Capillari and Chubby, I mean, gee whiz, imagine another year that they could have gotten in high school as athletes. And always wondered, you know, what would and I have actually coached a couple of kids that turned 19 in that 12th grade and legal, and was tremendous athletes. But man, it's not like old people.
Another year would have made a big advantage. I know Jim McNish, he talked to Dad about holding me back because I was so small, and he always talked about eating peanut butter. Give him some peanut butter so he would grow. But Jim McNish had a very positive influence on me also.
Oh, he was a great guy.
He was a great guy, but never got the opportunity to coach high school in Raleigh County.
Had to go to Mullins.
And he did a good job there. But he was my 7th grade coach.
I thought he might have coached at Shady one time.
I don't remember if he did. It must have been
when he first
came out. I think he upset somebody, got on the wrong side, and how that goes.
Yeah, I have to check into that.
I have to check in.
JW was 2 years ahead of me, and JW
Right.
for some reason adopted me and I always liked JW. He wasn't a big guy. He played football, basketball, track, and baseball. And he was all-state in a couple of those sports, and I always admired JW. And when he graduated, in the the annual or something, he left his track shoes to me or something. But I always thought the world of him.
He was up in Lewis County for a long time.
Yeah.
He died early and things. And his wife was the principal.
She
at
just
Lewis,
passed away.
She was principal at Lewis County High School.
Sylvia. Yeah.
Sylvia was. And
She just passed away not too long ago. But well, Jim, I thank you for coming by, and come back anytime. You're welcome, and we can bring up talks a little bit more.
Talk a little bit more, and maybe do some volunteering goals some days.
There you go.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Wayne, for having me today.
All right. Anybody else out there would like to be on our program, you can contact me at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here. And until next time, remember, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. This is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.